Welcome to Sex After Dark. I am your host, Angela Skurtu, and I'm a sex therapist. And today I thought I would talk to you about one, how I got into this field, and two, what it's like being a sex therapist every day. So, first of all, a lot of people ask me the question, like, what got you into sex therapy? And really, it's funny, but it started with religious trauma, of course. When I was younger, I was in a religious group that was pretty conservative. I'm not going to mention them because again, there are like churches are all kinds of churches, right? There's some that are nicer and that are tougher. But basically, I was in a religion that was pretty conservative, and sex was talked about in a very shame-based sort of way. And so, as a result, I actually really had a lot of um, internal struggles. And with my friends, I had a lot of struggles. So, something that would be taught in our upbringing was purity culture, essentially, that you needed to wait until sex, until marriage. And all of us were taught that growing up. And what it created in our relationships were a lot of us got married very young. A lot of my friends, for example, would get married at very young ages, and like really young because they were trying to wait to have sex until marriage, right? And so they would get married at 19, 18, 20, 21. And then after a while, every one of them would actually start talking to me. Like they'd come back a year later after being married and they'd say, Angela, I did it. I did get married, and I'm having sex, but I'm not having fun. Like, I'm only having sex for my partner, not having sex for me anymore. And I mean, literally, they dropped like flies. I kept hearing them again and again say the same thing. And I was just like, oh, wow, like what's going on with that, right? So that was one of the first things that got me interested in sex therapy because I thought, well, what's happening? Why are we all struggling with this, right? And so then later, I actually joined it was like a missionary group situation where I was working with some youth, like young teens, and it was a similar, shame-based environment. And two of the teens came out um, as gay, and they were trying to figure out how to talk to their parents about it. And it was not an easy situation because like it was almost like a trauma, an unveiling to some degree with the parents and these children. And instead of it being a positive experience of coming out and being okay, it's interesting. I actually lived in Hawaii at this time, and Hawaii is actually a pretty open environment for sex and sexuality. But in this situation, it wasn't, because of the religion that we were in. And so both of those stories really got me thinking, I want to do this. I want to see if I can make a change. And so then a third thing that was happening at the time was there was this lady, I think her name was Sue Johansson, and she had her own show. And it was a late night show, kind of like this, actually, right? Where she would play with sex toys, actually, and she rated them. She would try them, not on the show, but she would try them on her own. And then she'd come in and she'd talk about the sex toys and she'd rate them with little briquettes. And I was watching that and I thought to myself, I could be that person. I could definitely talk about sex toys and have some fun, just putting stuff out there about sex and sexuality. So those three stories really got me started and thinking about what am I going to do? How am I going to do this differently and have a little fun? So then I became a sex therapist. At first, I had become a licensed marriage therapist. So there was a whole graduate training there, and I spent 2 years at grad school in Oregon. And then after I got my license here in Missouri, it took me 2 years after my graduation to get a license here. And then I went for my AASECT certification, and AASECT is the national certifying body. And so, that took another 2 years, and I became a sex therapist. So the other question I said I would answer in this live stream is, what's it like being a sex therapist day to day? It's so funny because there's people who will meet me and they're like, "Oh, I've never met a sex therapist. What's she like? Like, what does she say?" And I mean, the job is interesting. I have to say, like, I could in one day go from talking about blowjobs or hand jobs to talking about parenting, because what's interesting about sex therapy is it's life therapy. You never just, you never just talk about sex because people are living their whole lives, right? So I could be talking to a couple about parenting and how they fight right before they're trying to have sex. And so then it's hard because they're not in the mood anymore. It's not like hard, not a good hard, like a penis hard, but it's like, it's not working for them because they're not in the mood and they're mad at each other, or they're not on the same page. So the funny thing about sex therapy is it's often life therapy. It's got to be a holistic approach. And yeah, so I could be talking about parenting, I could be talking about hand jobs, I could be talking about how to give orgasms, or if somebody doesn't get orgasms easily, I could be talking about how to get an orgasm during sex or how to get an orgasm with another partner. And it's funny, I do have some fun tools. So everybody loves my tools, but just some that are close by. So that's my clitoris model. And yeah, sometimes I'll be bringing out the clitoris model, just teaching people about their clitoris and how that works and how to use it or touch it in ways that feel good. I do have a golden penis in the office that I made at a Make a Mug class, by the way, which I find hilarious. But yeah, I have a penis. I have another penis as well, like in my briefcase. I actually have a 70s style briefcase in here. Oh, I will show you. It's quite funny. So I keep a 70s style briefcase in here with all of my toys and tools. And I will say, when it is time to do tools and toys, those are really fun. Sometimes I'm teaching people about sex toys. Sometimes I'm teaching them about their anatomy. Sometimes I'm teaching people about orgasms. And sometimes I'm not talking about sex at all. And we're talking about infidelity or how a couple is fighting and things they're mad about. And I don't know, it can be anything all day. It's not always therapy either. So sometimes I'm on a podcast, sometimes I'm on a live stream like I am tonight. And that's fun too. Like I get to be, what's funny is a lot of people want to know about sex therapy. So whenever they hear you're a sex therapist, they lean in like, ooh, what's she talking about? What do we have to say? Right. And so it could be that I'm interviewed for podcasts. I can also be networking, and that's another place that's so interesting is I'll be out networking and people are like, you do what? And I tell you, I have to make sure that I stay very professional in those public spaces because, as a sex therapist, I can be very crass and I can be very direct and to the point, but it's still like a business place. And so you have to be thoughtful of like how you present yourself. And this is the interesting thing. So I've been a sex therapist now for 12 years. And like one of my jobs living actually in St. Louis, Missouri, that's where I'm located, is how do you make sex and sex therapy wholesome? Basically, what are the ways to make it something that people are like, oh, this is okay. We all can go do this and it's just fine. Because the interesting thing, I actually learned this on the Viagra documentary that I watched on Discovery Channel, is that sex doesn't sell to the broad mass population. It sells in sort of seedy underground ways, but when you're trying to position yourself as a medical professional, sex doesn't sometimes sell. Sometimes people are like standoffish or scared to come see you. So anyhow, it can be all kinds of things and people have all kinds of assumptions. And I do my best to navigate those. So anyhow, that's the reason why I became a sex therapist, and that's a little bit of a window into the world of sex therapy. If you have any questions you want me to ask, I'm going to be live streaming more, so please submit them in comments below, because I would be happy to answer any of your questions. More like, what's it like being a sex therapist, or do you know about this or that? Because it gives me an idea of what you want to hear. And then also please like and subscribe, submit comments below. And if you would like to see me as a therapist, you can visit therapistinstlouis.com to submit a contact form. I see people both in person and via Zoom, and I'd be happy to help you. So thank you for watching and take care.